Welcome everyone to our discussion program today. We are going to talk about a topic that many people have strong opinions on, especially now with social media and technology being a big part of our lives. The question we are asking today is using dating apps wrong when you are in a committed relationship? With us to discuss this are Chloe and Liam. Chloe believes that using these apps is wrong if you have a partner. Liam thinks the situation is more complex and depends on the couple. This is an important conversation because many couples face these kinds of questions in modern relationships. We will start with opening statements from both Chloe and Liam. Then, they will have a chance to respond to each other. After that, we will have a more open discussion, and finally, they will give their closing thoughts. Let's begin. Chloe, would you like to start with your opening statement?
Thank you, Sarah. I believe the answer to today's question is quite clear. Using dating apps when you are in a committed, monogamous relationship is a definite form of betrayal. There's no gray area here for me. Firstly, it completely breaks the trust that is so important for any healthy relationship. If you are hiding your activity on a dating app from your partner, that secrecy itself is damaging. Trust is like the foundation of a house. If it cracks, the whole house can fall down. Secondly, let's be honest about what dating apps are for. Their main purpose is to help people find romantic or sexual partners. So, if you are on these apps while claiming to be committed to someone, it strongly suggests you are looking for someone else, or at least open to it. Why else would you be there? This isn't about finding friends for a hobby. These platforms are designed for dating. Finally, even if no physical cheating happens, being on a dating app can be a form of emotional infidelity. Think about how your partner would feel if they found out. They would likely feel hurt, disrespected, and very insecure. It makes them question their worth and your commitment. A committed relationship means you choose to be loyal and focus your romantic energy on your partner. You shouldn't be seeking validation or keeping your options open elsewhere. It's about showing respect and prioritizing the person you've chosen to be with.
Thank you, Chloe. Now Liam will hear your opening statement.
Thanks, Sarah. I understand Chloe's points, and they are valid for many relationships. However, I believe the issue of using dating apps while in a relationship isn't always so black and white. I think it really depends on the specific context and the understanding between the partners. Firstly, the definition of a quote, committed relationship can actually vary from couple to couple. Some couples might have more open agreements or different boundaries than others. For example, they might agree that using apps for making new friends is okay, especially if the app has clear features for that, and if it's discussed openly. It's not common, I agree, but these types of understandings do exist. Secondly, I think the most important factor here is honesty and communication, not the app itself. If a partner is completely open about why they are using an app and there's mutual consent and trust, the situation looks very different. If both people are comfortable and have agreed on it, who are we to say it's wrong for them? The problem starts when there's secrecy and deception, not necessarily with the app itself. Thirdly, we also need to consider intent and context. Sometimes, an old, forgotten profile might be discovered by a partner. This doesn't automatically mean the person is actively using it or has bad intentions. It could be a genuine mistake, an account they forgot to delete. It's important to understand the full story before jumping to conclusions and accusing someone of betrayal. So for me, open dialogue, clearly defined boundaries set by the couple themselves, and honesty are much more important than a general rule that says dating apps are always wrong. It's about what works for that specific relationship.
Thank you, Liam. Now we move to rebuttals. Chloe, you have about 150 words to respond to Liam's points.
Liam, I understand you're saying that communication is key, and that some couples might have different rules. I agree that open relationships exist, where perhaps this is acceptable. However, I think for the vast majority of people, when they say committed relationship, they mean a monogamous one, where exclusivity is expected. Our discussion should focus on this more common understanding. You mentioned using apps for friendship. While some apps might claim to offer this, their primary design and reputation are for dating and romance. So even if the intention is genuinely to find friends, a partner is very likely to feel suspicious and hurt. The association of these apps with finding new romantic partners is just too strong. It's like walking a tightrope. Why take that risk in a committed relationship? The potential for misunderstanding, emotional hurt, and breaking that core expectation of exclusivity is just too high. For most standard committed relationships, it's a dangerous path that can easily lead to serious problems.
Thank you, Chloe. Liam, your turn to respond to Chloe.
Chloe, your points about trust and the potential for hurt in conventional monogamous relationships are very important, and I don't disagree with them in that context. Many people would indeed feel betrayed, and that's a serious issue. However, I still believe that simply banning something without understanding the specific intent or situation can be problematic. You assume the worst intent automatically. What if, for example, someone is genuinely just curious about how these apps work? Perhaps for research, or as I said, an old account gets reactivated by mistake, or through a software update. Should this immediately mean they are betraying their partner if they haven't even interacted with anyone on the app? My main point is that deception is the real problem. If there is absolute transparency, and importantly, genuine agreement and comfort from both partners, then the act itself might not be inherently wrong. The focus should always be on the health, rules, and specific agreements within that unique relationship, rather than applying a universal judgment.
Now, let's move into our discussion period. Chloe, Liam suggests that if a couple discusses it and both agree that using dating apps is okay for them, then there's no issue. How do you respond to that, especially if they define their commitment and boundaries differently from the traditional view?
Well, Sarah, if a couple genuinely, truly agrees on this, and they have a very clear, open understanding of what that means for their relationship, then that's their choice. However, I think such agreements are extremely rare in what most people consider a committed, monogamous relationship. It's more typical of an open relationship, which is a different kind of structure. The term dating app itself is the problem. These apps are designed to connect people for dating. So even if a couple says, "Oh, we're just looking for friends on it," it's hard to believe that's the only motivation, or that it won't lead to complications. It's like saying you're going to a nightclub just to enjoy the music, but you're actively on the dance floor trying to catch someone's eye. The environment itself encourages certain interactions. For most people, the expectation of exclusivity in a committed relationship means not actively seeking other romantic or sexual connections. Using a dating app, regardless of the stated reason, directly contradicts that fundamental expectation. It creates a situation where doubt and insecurity can easily grow, even with initial agreement.
Liam, Chloe argues that the primary design, purpose, and public perception of dating apps make them unsuitable for anyone in a committed relationship, regardless of a stated intent, like, quote, making friends. What about the inherent temptation these apps might present, or the high risk of misinterpretation by the partner, even if they initially agreed?
That's a fair point about perception and potential temptation, Sarah. Dating apps are certainly designed to be engaging. However, I believe we need to give adults some credit for their ability to manage temptations and stick to agreements. If a couple has had a very honest and thorough conversation about using a specific app for a specific purpose, let's say genuinely for platonic networking, if the app truly supports that, and they've set clear boundaries, then the responsibility lies with them to honor that agreement. Temptation exists in many areas of life, not just on apps. People in committed relationships encounter attractive individuals at work, in social settings, everywhere. The key is commitment and self-control. Regarding misinterpretation, this is where ongoing communication is vital. It's not just about one initial agreement. It's about checking in with each other, ensuring both partners still feel comfortable, and being transparent about any interactions. If the app is being used secretly, then yes, that's a breach of trust. But if it's open, and the partner can see what's happening, and the agreed-upon boundaries are respected, the risk of negative misinterpretation decreases significantly. It all comes back to the strength and honesty of their communication.
A question for both of you now. What if someone isn't actively using the app, not swiping, not messaging, but they simply haven't deleted an old profile from before the relationship? Is that still wrong, in your view?
From my perspective, Sarah, even if the profile is inactive, not deleting it can still be an issue. It might show a lack of full commitment to the current relationship. It's like keeping a door slightly open to the past or to other possibilities. When you commit to someone, you should be closing those old doors to show your partner they are your priority and that you are fully invested. Leaving a dating profile up, even an old one, can send a hurtful message that you're not entirely off the market. It can make the partner feel insecure, wondering why it's still there. It's a small action to delete it, but it can mean a lot in terms of respect and reassurance for your partner.
I see it a bit differently, or at least with more nuance. I agree that if the partner has expressed discomfort about an old profile and it's intentionally kept active against their wishes, that's disrespectful and problematic. That shows a lack of consideration. However, sometimes people genuinely forget about old accounts. They might have created a profile years ago, used it briefly, and then completely forgotten it existed. In such cases, if it's discovered, the important thing is how the person responds. If they are immediately willing to delete it and explain it was an oversight, then it's likely not a sign of malicious intent or lack of commitment. The context matters. Was it a forgotten account, or was it deliberately kept? An honest mistake is different from a conscious choice to keep options open.
Thank you both. We're moving towards the end of our discussion. It's time for closing statements. Chloe, please share your final thoughts.
To sum up my position, I firmly believe that using dating apps when you are in a committed, monogamous relationship is generally a betrayal of trust. It inherently suggests that you are looking for alternatives or are not fully satisfied within your current relationship, which is deeply hurtful to a partner. These actions break the fundamental trust and security that are essential for a loving partnership to thrive. Even if the intent isn't to physically cheat, the secrecy and the search for external validation or connection on a platform designed for romance can cause significant emotional pain and damage. Healthy, strong relationships are built on mutual respect, unwavering honesty, and a clear focus on one's partner. Keeping yourself active on dating apps goes against these principles. Therefore, for the sake of your relationship's health, and out of respect for your partner's feelings, I urge anyone in a committed relationship to stay away from dating apps. Focus on nurturing the love you have.
Thank you, Chloe. And now, Liam, for your closing statement.
I'd like to reiterate that this issue is more complex than a simple yes or no. While I understand and respect the strong feelings about betrayal that Chloe has described, I believe that whether using a dating app is wrong truly depends on the specific context of the relationship. The most critical elements are open communication, mutual consent, and clearly defined boundaries that are agreed upon by both partners. Wrong is a very strong and often subjective judgment. If a couple has discussed it openly, and both genuinely agree to certain terms regarding app usage, perhaps for specific non-romantic purposes, if such a thing is truly feasible and transparent, then it's their specific agreement that matters most. The primary problem arises from deception, secrecy, and acting against a partner's known wishes or the established terms of the relationship. It's the breach of trust, not necessarily the app itself in every single scenario. So rather than making blanket condemnations, I encourage couples to have honest conversations about their boundaries, expectations, and what fidelity means to them in the digital age. Honesty and mutual understanding are the foundations of any strong relationship.
Thank you, Liam. And thank you, Chloe, for sharing your insightful perspectives on this very relevant topic. We've heard strong arguments from both sides today. Chloe has emphasized that using dating apps in a committed relationship is often an inherent betrayal of trust, and can cause significant emotional harm. Liam has argued for a more conditional view, stressing that the rightness or wrongness depends heavily on the specific agreements, communication, and transparency within the relationship itself. This discussion certainly gives us all a lot to think about regarding our own relationships and expectations. So to our audience, we leave you with a few questions to consider. What do trust and commitment mean to you in this digital age? How do you define and communicate boundaries in your own relationships? Thank you for joining us today. That's all for this broadcast.